producer surplus and allocative efficiency. So some basic key economic concepts. Everyone should understand that as price increases, supply will increase, and as price decreases, demand will increase. So the basic, supply-demand curve. And then market price is set at the equilibrium point where the two intersect. And today we're going to be looking at the market for Range Rover. It's saying there's perfect competition, as in there's hundreds of dealerships around America, and you can choose from which dealership they can set their price technically. Some of the key concepts for consumer surplus. There's two types of consumer surplus. There's individual consumer surplus, which is the individual net gain that happens when a consumer purchases a good, and then the total consumer surplus is all individual consumer surplus combined into one. And if the price increases, consumer surplus will decrease and vice versa. So now looking more at it on the graph. The equations, there's not definite equations for the consumer surplus, but if you look at it, to find individual consumer surplus, let's say Joe is willing to pay $100,000 for a Range Rover. Drawing a line right there, his individual consumer surplus will be the price, which is $100,000, minus the price at equilibrium, which is $80,000. So his consumer surplus for individually will be $20,000. And then for Cam, he's willing to pay $80,000 and equilibrium is $80,000, so he has no consumer surplus. And then Martha, who's willing to pay $60,000, well, if equilibrium's above that, so she's not going to be able to buy the Range Rover she wants. And market price, obviously at $80K, so the total consumer surplus is the area of this triangle. Consumer surplus is the triangle on top, and then I'll talk about producer surplus at the bottom. So you just have to find the area of this, which is just 1/2 of the price up here, which is the price max, minus the price at equilibrium. So 160 minus 80, which is 80, times the quantity, which is 8. So 80 times 8 is going to be your total consumer surplus, so the total area of this triangle. And then kind of the similar concepts is producer surplus. So individual producer surplus is the individual net gain from selling a good, and total producer surplus is the all individual net gain. And then again, but if price increases for the demand curve, demand supply curve, producer surplus increases as well. So the producer surplus triangle is on the bottom. Producer surplus again is price at equilibrium instead minus the price at the minimum. So 80 minus 0, which is 80, times the quantity, which is 8. In this case, producer surplus and consumer surplus are the same thing, just happen to happen like that, but that's not always the case. So let's say for individual, dealer 1 is willing to sell for 40K, but market equilibrium is at 80, so 80 minus 40, so his individual net gain would be 40K, and dealer 2 is willing to sell for 80K, but the price is 80K, so he has no net gain. And if dealer 3 is willing to sell for 90K, well, why would he sell for above the equilibrium when he can just sell for 80K? So that transaction won't happen. And then again, the market price is at 80K, so this is going to be the total producer surplus. And then looking at a monopoly, kind of a similar concept. Producer surplus is usually larger because in a monopoly you can set your price, so they're going to try finding a price that is in the favor of the producer. And in a monopoly, because it's not always allocative efficient, which I'll talk about in a little bit, there's going to be deadweight loss in this region because this whole triangle isn't covered by consumer and producer surplus. And then talking about that allocative efficiency in a market, allocative efficiency is when all resources are used in an optimum fashion. Allocative efficiency occurs at the market equilibrium usually, and maximum total surplus is achieved through this. So look here, it's allocative efficient because consumer surplus and producer surplus takes up the whole region because they're using equilibrium. But here, let's say a producer decides we only want to sell 4,000 Range Rovers. They're limiting their consumer and producer surplus by taking away this region, which is at equilibrium, to the quantity that they decide to sell at. So the area of this is the consumer and producer surplus, and the area of this is the deadweight loss, which Mackenzie will talk about later. So this is allocative efficient, and this is not allocative efficient. In the end, it's This one doesn't have deadweight loss, and that one has deadweight loss. And then, so in total overview, consumer surplus is the net gain received from a purchase, and producer surplus is the net gain received from selling a good. And consumer surplus is the triangle on the top, and you take the area to find the total one, and then you just use one of the numbers wherever the individual is selling at to find the individual one. Same thing goes for producer surplus, it's the bottom triangle. And then allocative efficiency occurs at market equilibrium with no deadweight loss, and this whole region will be taken up by just surplus. Any questions?
Well, this graph, so yes, that is allocated efficient, but keep in mind, too, allocated efficient means, you mentioned, like, the reason what society wants. So price equals marginal cost can be used to price for instance, why this is allocated efficient, the price